This ethical question is very difficult for believers to answer, and we recently saw it stump Cliff Knechtley when he was talking with Alex O'Connor. And Cliff's answer to this was called the most public embarrassment that they've seen in a debate for a long time, and he's receiving a lot of public backlash over it. The question goes like this. You are a believing Christian today, but tomorrow you wake up and you find yourself in ancient Canaan. And you're a Canaanite, you have a wife, you have children, you have a family, and you know, because you know Deuteronomy 20, that the Israelites are going to come and they're about to wipe you out under God's command. Not just you, but the women and children as well. The question is, do you fight against Israel? The reason this is so difficult is when believing Christians read the scriptures, they read themselves as the Israelites, the chosen people, the ones enacting divine violence, the ones enacting divine justice even. They see themselves as the main character. And this question forces you to answer and it forces you to have some empathy. What if you were on the other side of it? And it's really difficult to answer because either you have to say, I'm just gonna, sit there in the corner while someone slaughters my children, or you have to say, I'm gonna fight against what God would want. And that's very difficult for a believer to have to wrestle with. And when Cliff wrestled with it, it was just ugly to watch. Eventually, with Alex kind of pushing him, he did finally say that if God is God, he has the authority to take the life that he chooses, and he would essentially let the slaughter happen. But at the beginning, he said that he would fight, so he actually flipped in his answer. And the problem, of course, is that this justifies any kind of violence if you believe that God is on your side. So Alex pushes back and says, what if we applied this to modern times? And what if ISIS says that they know that their God commanded to destroy whatever? Should we accept that? And then again, he just really struggled with this question. And usually what happens with apologists is they'll get backed into one of two corners. Either they'll end up defending genocide, which is just icky to even do, but they'll do that in order to preserve biblical inerrancy. Or they will admit that sometimes we do things in the name of God and we were wrong, or we misinterpreted what God was wanting us to do. And if you play that move, then you kind of weaken the idea of divine perfection or biblical authority, because then how do we know when someone was really talking to God in the Bible and someone wasn't? And then you just kind of lose it as the moral authority that you want it to be. And in this debate, Cliff ended up in the first camp, where he ended up defending genocide, and you just see thousands of comments saying, this is why I left the church, or this was the worst thing I've ever seen, or the lack of empathy here is just so striking. And it really rubbed people the wrong way because he ended up having to defend genocide and admitting to letting his children be slaughtered. So this is a really fun question to ask at family dinners if you want everyone to not like you.
Okay, I'll comment bit by bit, right? But generally speaking, of course, this is pointing towards the Christian because they believe in the Bible, and the Bible actually said about God commanding people for that genocide, basically, right? Muslims do not have anything similar, obviously. Hence, we do not have the same moral dilemma. Of course, in the context of the Quran, one might cite that there are verses that command the Muslim to go to battle, but all of those are easily justified, especially when the Quran itself actually does justify it, and there's no such thing as anything similar in the sense that you should also kill the babies, the infant, the woman, the whatever, right? And the animals. So we do not have the same thing, because the only thing that we are commanded to fight is the kuffar, that is the one that violate, etc., right? Yeah, that's number one. Number two, what comes to mind as well, in the sense that if you flip, because the moral issue is one thing, but now you position yourself to the one that is being inflicted upon, right? So in Islam we have the jinayat, the criminal law that have several severe punishment on several crime. For example, chopping off your hands, or death penalty. That's number one. And number two that comes to mind as well is the episode with Ibrahim and Ismail, right? Where Ibrahim was commanded to slaughter Ismail. So those story have, if you put yourself in the one that is to be punished for the crime, but that's easily justified in the sense that you committed the crime, so you should face the punishment. And I remembered some Christian actually asked whether you would want that punishment, and there are some Muslims said, if I committed the crime and I want to cleanse myself from my sin, I would go through that punishment. And that is normally how it happened for many Muslim kids, where I'm not saying all criminal that happen to be Muslim want to be punished, but a believer that realize his sin and want to be cleansed of that sin, they would want to be dealt with the Sharia, right? So that's one thing. But for the Ismail, and that this relate to what she mentioned later on in the video about how do you distinguish between those who really what they believe God told them is really from God, or it has a hallucination, etc. In the story of Ibrahim, he knew exactly that it's God, and Ismail actually believed so as well, right? What the father Ibrahim is actually from God and not something else. And Ismail, because in the story there's Ibrahim, there's Hajar, and there's Ismail, and all three actually comply and obey, right? Meaning, is this truly from God? Is it command of God, right? Because the father is the one who had to go through with doing it. Ismail actually says, if it's indeed from God, I'll sacrifice myself in that sense, and the mother who allows it, right? But that, of course, we know eventually it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Ismail was not actually slaughtered. But I think the question still remains that, but you do not know that when you are going to implement it, right? And that story, for how to say, because the story from the atheist, what if you apply it now? You cannot, because there's no longer any prophet that can claim to receive revelation, because the last and final prophet is confirmed to be Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So that's one. But hypothetically, if we are to live before the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and then meaning, for example, between the time of Ibrahim and Muhammad, right, in between, it's not yet a confirmed last prophet. So if we are in that time talking right now, right, and then someone says, what if someone claimed to be prophet, and then he says he want to kill his son because God told him, right? So the question is, because we cannot say that we no longer accept any prophet, but the burden of proof on him, especially if we are the third party, right? Meaning that we would demand the proof, right? So so okay, should I watch this back again? Because I think I have touched upon all of the important points, but I'm interested to know what the Christian would say, right? Because as I mentioned, the parallel, there's no real parallel between this exact command from God to destroy the Canaanites there with anything in the Quran, because there's no such command from God to do something similar. Christians, I think the previous Christian that I have heard about this is they talk about, but this is before. That doesn't really solve the problem, because even before, the question is not when, but did God actually told to kill everything there, right? And I think there are some Christians that believe that, in that circumstances, genocide is granted, is okay, because God commanded. And I think those kind of Christian is the one that would feel what Israel is doing to Palestine, to Gaza now as justified. Because they say, yeah, because they're chosen people of God or something, and then hence, genocide even to babies and children is justified. So those who have that kind of mentality would see what is happening now in Palestine as justified. I'm not sure is there any Christian that would think otherwise, in the sense what, because they have to accept that God commanded, right? I'm not sure whether there are any other argument from Christians that some goes along the line where in the time of the Jews, etc., God have to be more severe, etc., but that still do not deny or did not negate God did command. Oh yeah, they say that those children, somehow I'm not sure, they have some justification why those children and animals had to be killed as well. I'm not sure, but those are the one that if you see clips where the Israel people feel that it is justified to kill babies in Palestine because the babies will be brainwashed to become blah blah blah, right? So they projected that and they say that hence it's justified to kill them now. So I think Christian that believe as such would say the same thing. I'm not sure, but this is a question to you Christians. What do you feel about this question, and how do you, which side between what she mentioned just now, which side do you sit on, or do you have a third position that I have not heard of before? Feel free to share. Thank you for watching. See you next time.